From the southernmost point of Dorne to the lands of always winter, and what is west of Westeros and those shadows in the east, this is Casterly Talk, and I'm Ken Napsok, here for Season 4 of Game of Thrones. That's right, the Game of Thrones rewatch is now going to kick up into high gear because we have turned that chapter. The Red Wedding is behind us. The pages have been flipped, and we're here for the all-new Game of Thrones. The new cast, the new generation, kind of, sort of, having fun here with all of you as I'm just excited to talk about this episode and Season 4. As always, part of what we're doing here is looking back on this wonderful world and finding the themes and the lessons that are present in these episodes, find out what they mean, what is this particular episode trying to say to us, and how does it connect with Game of Thrones in the larger sense. We'll also make references to Song of Ice and Fire, Fire and Blood, a lot of other things, of course. But mostly it's just me and this beard right here if you're watching on YouTube. But if you're listening, maybe you can hear. Oh, I got my Davos after the war beard is coming in nicely. This is the thing with beards. It's like that great old Kids in the Hall sketch with Kevin McDonald, who he grows a vacation beard and it takes over his life. That's what beards do. Sometimes you're powerless against the idea of trimming or shaving. It's a wild beard today. It's a Game of Thrones beard. It's a Season 4 Game of Thrones beard. So excited to talk about this episode. Two Swords, original air date, April 6, 2014. Wow. Now we're getting into this. We're getting closer to the times in which we live, but man, it still seems like so long ago, yet yesterday. Where I was for this season, I have a little bit more memories where I was for the big showdown a little bit later on in Season 4 between the Mountain and the Red Viper. I remember right where I was, hotel room in Vegas. We'll talk about that. But we are talking about Two Swords. Original air date again, April 6, 2014. Director D.B. Weiss, credited. Benioff and Weiss kind of co-direct because of union rules. Only one could get the full credit. D.B. Weiss takes the short end of the stick here, I guess. Drew the short straw. Writers are Benioff and Weiss, leading charge on that. Cinematographer Jonathan Freeman, editor Katie Weiland back editing here. Such a good editor on this show. I mean, there's very few points where I'd ever say Game of Thrones was badly edited or shot. And yes, in Season 8, there's some controversial night shoots. I get that. But even then, I think it was shot beautiful. It depends on your TV. I always say season 8, I was very fortunate. I don't mess with I'm not a tech person. My TV comes as is. I just have to be on the right settings, I guess. But I know other people that weren't. But anyways, we're still 4 seasons away from that, Ken. Let's concentrate on what we got right here. This is the beginning of this important season. A season that I generally have a real positive memory of, right? A lot of big things happen. The show, as we talked about when we looked at the end of Season 3, it's a turning of the page. A lot of the cast members and characters we've been familiar with, spent a lot of time with. Nice way to put it, no longer with us. We are, I think, expanding the story in a lot of ways. Enter Dorne. And yes, we're going to have some disappointments with Dorne storylines a little bit later on. Disappointments that I carry as well, being a book reader as well. Oh, that book reader term. But also for me, this is the season, looking back as I try to go through my own journey with Game of Thrones, and hopefully you can connect with the one that you have on yourself there. This is the first season where I, quote unquote, knew everything that was happening. I had been doing the show book, kind of getting into the whole story there. And I going into Season 3, knew that Seasons 3 and 4 were kind of split, covering different portions of Storm of Swords. So I thought, you know what, I'll hold back. And after Season 3, and then after Season 3, I was like, nuts to that. I'm going ahead. I'm reading ahead. And I think by Season 4, I may have finished all 5 books by that time, maybe. That part I don't remember. That part doesn't really matter. Now I feel like an old man talking about the weather and traffic. How did you get here? How was the weather, Dad? So, what we love doing here on Casterly Talk, and by the way, if you're watching on YouTube, I do have the Streamlabs link up. This is not a live show. If you want to help support the show and just kind of have a question or any kind of support through Streamlabs, they're open. They're not necessary. Appreciate considering helping out this channel as it grows. But I'm here to just talk with y'all and continue diving in deep into this wonderful world. Let's focus directly on two swords, which I consider, and I am not an expert. I'm a student of Game of Thrones, is what I always say. I consider this one of the most compelling and well put together episode ones. Episode ones are always going to be a challenge. We talk about this. We've talked about this in detail 3 times now. Pilot has a different duty. The reworked pilot that we all saw did its job, clearly, because the show's still kicking after the pilot, that version of the pilot. Season 2. Season 3, pieces on the playing board is what we always say. Season 2 expands the show greatly. Stannis arrives, a lot of new threats. Season 3 does that opening does a great job. It is a good opener. I love the stuff with Mance Rayder, as you all know. Does a great job of really setting the goals forward. But it's still, I remember at the time watching season 3, episode 1, going, okay. And that's kind of the general view of all episode 1s. Okay, we love the show so much, let's get to it. But then you come to season 4. And I don't think it's a hot take, but just saying it's just one of the best for me. It does what it needs to do. Here's where everyone's at. Here's some of the new players. We got some big new players, bold, vibrant new players on the scene. Mostly just Oberyn Martell, but he fills the void very well, fills the room indeed. And Arya Sand as well. Dear Varma is so great in this role, especially this season. But man, it does more than just put the pieces out on the playing board for me. The connections that we got going on, new connections, new characters, connections to what is coming, and really the connections to what was and moving past that, and the setup. And there's big high stakes and tension already present in a lot of things going on here. It isn't so much a summary. Season 3, episode 1 has some summary parts. So I remember the Battle of Blackwater. We're dealing with that. We're, it's more strongly connected because, again, seasons 1, 2, and 3, I really feel the first kind of arc of the show. Seasons 4, 5, and 6 are kind of the next arc. So we're ramping things up. And I just really feel a lot of the scenes here don't feel like episode 1 scenes to me. So let's start diving in. And also, by the way, we'll dive into the themes that are present, what this show is, this particular episode is trying to communicate. I think one of the things is trying to communicate is like, hey, what are you right now? Who were you? Who are you now? And where do you want to go? Because that's what the show is doing at this point. You spent 3 seasons with us. You had a different view of the show. Your perspective was, Stark's at the center of it. Dany off doing her thing. And now we're getting to a different spot. And now we're leading to different things. And this season begins with Tywin Lannister. We'll talk about it more, but Tywin Lannister, wordlessly, no dialogue, burning down ice and turning it into the 2 Valyrian steel swords that, of course, Wood as well, and Oathkeeper that he's going to pass on to his family. He thinks it's all about legacy. And Tywin's got the victory. But that's what we knew. And now we're moving forward. And this episode ends with Arya, her sword, needle. It's back in play. Tywin thinks he's destroyed all the swords, the ancestral swords at House Stark. But there is definitely one still out there. We are on to a new part of the show. And I think this episode does all that. It puts it all together. 6.64 million watched it on first viewing. A replay added another 2 million to that. Highest numbers, not just for the series, highest numbers for HBO since the Sopranos finale. Don't Stop Believing. And that's just a reminder of, I know where GOT goes in the public zeitgeist. I know what happens if you're at a party and you say something about Game of Thrones or specifically, season 7 or 8. I know the conversations you'll probably be forced to have. But this is a reminder of where GOT stood in the zeitgeist at this point in 2014. It was on top of the food chain. And, hey, I guess you could say once you reach the top there, there's only so much higher you can go. The rest is downhill. But we'll get to seasons 7 and 8 when it's time to do that. But just in terms of numbers, this has an important legacy, this particular episode and season 4 as well. The show is firing on all cylinders. What is this episode known for? I think more than anything, this is, the introduction of Oberyn. Pedro Pascal comes almost out of nowhere. Yeah, he's had a ton of acting credits before this, but he's boom, gone. I won't say who. I do have a friend who knew him during this time. Actually, I was friends with him, and they talk. I've heard some stories of it. It changed everything and changed it overnight. This episode just changed everything overnight. And by all reports, Pedro, a good dude that deserves every amount of success. And I cannot think there's so many actors in Game of Thrones who just knock it out of the park. So many who are built for their roles, and you don't like ranking things, but I don't know if there's Lena Headey, she's built for Cersei Lannister. I think Emilia Clarke's ends up becoming the right choice for Daenerys Targaryen, and so on down the line. I think Mark Addy is Robert Baratheon's one of the best casting. Stephen Delane, grumpy old Stephen Delane, great casting choice as my man Stannis. But I just don't think anyone is more just perfectly cast and fit for the role than Pedro Pascal is Oberyn Martell. And we're going to start off with this. Here's this. I don't know if this is a hot take. I don't know what's a hot take anymore. I don't like hot takes. I don't believe in hot takes. I believe in nuance and thoughtfulness and insight. But I also will say this. I do believe Oberyn Martell is better on the show than the books. There you go. If this was 2014, maybe my channel would be destroyed. I don't know. There's not much of Casterly talk is still growing anyways, so it's easy to destroy us now. But we are growing like we're House Tyrell. No, all right, never mind. I really do think. Go with me here. Storm of Swords is my favorite of the Song of Ice and Fire books so far. And it's chapter after chapter is just a pulse pounding read. It is amazing. Throw any fancy critic words at it. It is what it is. Storm of Swords, I think, is the best of the best. And Oberyn is a big part of that. Oberyn is there. Oberyn is present. But when I closed that book and was now heading into season 4, I got to tell you, I knew what happened. I was excited to see him. But Oberyn was just in the back. He was one of many things I was excited. It did not dominate that book for me. And a lot of that is how you take it in and how you read. George R. R. Martin's books are dense, and maybe you're concentrating on other parts of his story and the myriad characters out there for you to choose from. And I think for me personally, Oberyn was there. I liked him. I was intrigued by House Martell, intrigued by stuff from Dorne. But he was just one of many. But not here on the show. The show, different medium. The show's got to concentrate on different things. It's got to put different parts of these characters and their personalities out there for us to take in. And here comes Pedro Pascal. And he just, I don't want to say, it's not that he took a role and made it better. He just really brought Oberyn to life in a way that he wasn't in the books for me. So that sets us all up for a lot of pain. We'll get to that. So this episode's known for that and that great opening scene. We will talk about that. I think it is definitely known for what Tywin does to the swords, but more importantly, what happens on the back end of the episode with Arya Stark coming on back as well. Throw in some stuff about that. That's part of this episode's legacy. The other stuff is a lot of setup. There's some great scenes, full attention. But again, if you spend more time with the scenes, I think they go beyond just it's a setup type of situation. I think there's some great stuff at play, but I think these are the big things. Oberyn, his great introduction, and this episode ends with Arya and the Hound getting the chicken and the horses that they want. And we'll get to that. Arya Stark, the avatar for Stark vengeance. Love looking at what this particular episode did to the story itself, the impact it has. I do one of the first ones I listed, and I try not to go in just simple order, scene by scene there. But I got to tell you, Arya emerging following the trauma that she's gone through, all 3 seasons of it, particularly the stuff at the end with Red Wedding, particularly the stuff seeing Robb and his, body there at the end, and what she does to the Frey man around the campfire. She's traumatized. We're all traumatized, but she's emerging, and it's a different Arya. It is a deadly Arya, and we're rooting for the violence. We're there for the violence. It's just that part of Arya's journey, and she'll move on and head towards season 8, where she ends up. And walks away from this life of vengeance that she's currently living in right now. But we need her. We're rooting for her. We're excited for this. As I said before, it is I kind of view her as this avatar for Stark vengeance. I think DB Weiss refers to her in a similar capacity of she is what's left for us. You got Bran doing his Bran thing. We don't spend time with Bran here. Jon is, Jon, even by his own admission, bastard son. He's not House Stark, but we consider him that at this point in the show. And I think into the end, too. He's Stark to the end in a lot of ways. But, he's kind of on his own thing. He's in his own thing. Arya becomes House Stark for a lot of us. And we're rooting for her here. And I think this is a big impact on the story going forward, where Arya is. And I think how it impacts the story and how it impacts us as an audience is also part of this segment. I think we've had these doubts about the Hound from the beginning. And we also have had these moments where we think we like the Hound. We don't want to root for him, especially season 1, but then we start to. All the things start to happen. By him running away, Battle of Blackwater, with season 3, captured by the Brotherhood. But we we don't like him, but we like him. I think this is the episode. I think the part of this episode's legacy is we are now rooting for the Hound. He talks about a man's got to have a code. Arya said, you killed the butcher's boy, but you won't steal from a rich man. Everyone's got to have a code. So we're starting to understand a little bit more the Hound. And again, when he runs into Polliver and the other Lannister men, and the end result of that, but just all along the way, the dialogue, the quips, the calls for chicken. I think we're now. There's no question, at least in my mind. There's no question. I really love the Hound, and I'm oddly rooting for this brutal man, and start to, the journey that Arya starts going on. It really, and has been on. It really kicks up. She's really now starting to learn about survival, learning what she needs to do, power into her own hands, all those kind of things, and she's got a ways to go with that journey, but. All this starts to build up to this impossible task. And this is, of course, as we know, show only. But later on, when we get this showdown between Brienne of Tarth and the Hound, this wonderful fantasy booking, if you're thinking about wrestling, that's not present in the books. By the time you get to that, this is Brienne. We love Brienne. We're rooting for Brienne. We're rooting for her vows. We're rooting for her trying to get to Sansa. She's even got Podrick with her. We like Podrick. And in that showdown, I don't want the Hound to defeat her at all. But when Hound starts telling her that stuff later on about, basically, as I paraphrase, like, I'm the one protecting Arya. That's not, you don't understand how to do that. We're on the Hound side. It's an interesting spot to be in as a fan at this point in the show, and particularly if you're a book reader too. Brienne is so great in books too, as is the Hound. But man, when we build to that, I think it really does go back to these moments with him chugging Polliver's beer and demanding those chickens and wiping everyone out with the help of Arya. Of course, it all kind of begins here. Big impact for Dany and Jon as they get their new goals. I think their new goals really start to emerge. And if you start tracking the show through those eyes, which is probably where my focus goes the most on this rewatch, I'll say that's where my focus is really at, is tracking Dany and Jon, because now we're looking through the microscope and the lens of having completed all 8 seasons and knowing where the show takes those characters. And again, you probably have some disagreements with some of the choices. You might like it completely. I love it. But one of the reasons I love it is I'm going back and tracking their journeys, tracking where we're at. Dany, we've been talking about it. Season 3. I need an army. If I'm going to take Westeros, take it back, take what is mine, really slide into that position of power I feel is mine. I need an army. I get an army. I get it through my own choice of violence, yelling Dracarys. But then she decides, outside of Yunkai to use that power to help others. It's really clear now. She's already done that. We've already seen that in action, even going back to season 1 with Mary Man's Duel, all that kind of stuff. Kind of gets her in a little trouble, right? But it makes her who she is, and she's got that heart. She's got that, I've got a position of power. I'm going to try to use it. But I think outside of Yunkai is when she really decides to use it. But now here she is. We see her with new Dario alert. Michelle Husman comes in as Dario. And I think in the end for me, I understand the casting seemed at the time bland, especially if you're a book Dario fan and you want the purple beards and then you want him to be completely exotic. He kind of looked like a lot of folks in Westeros. I've always agreed with that. And Ed Screen had a different look at least. But I think this is just a better performer and a better actor. And at the end of the day, he is more than an effective Dario for me. And I love the way he plays. He is a brutal man. He is a survivor in this world. But a lot of his interactions with Dany, and the reason she does find that connection is he's being pretty honest, and he sees her for what she is. And he's got not just great advice like, hey, the little queen needs the advice. It's not that. I just think he really sees her for who she is, reflects back on her what she kind of already knows about herself, but he's also there just to he's actually there in her corner. And Jorah's in her corner. My man Jorah's in her corner, but Jorah's got a little spotty history already with Dany that will soon be revealed by the time season 5 rolls around. So we're here, and Dany gets some new goals. This you've got to learn the land if you're going to rule the people on it, and this becomes for better or worse. And I don't mean that from an outside the show criticism, but I think for Dany as a character, she's going to be learning some powerful and painful lessons in Meereen. We know where that goes. It's not going to be a walk in the park. And so far, it has been for Dany. Oh, there's been challenges, and bad things continue to happen to Dany, and the world treats her a certain way, which is a lot of, I think, the lesson in Dany's story. One of the lessons for us as an audience is how this world treats her, how these people treat her as a woman in power. It is part of what's there in the story, for me at least. But now this is her new goal. She's going to learn the land. She wants to go rescue. She wants to go break the chains, but she's got to learn the difference between, like Tywin would say, winning and ruling, though Tywin might have a different explanation of that. So I love what we got going on here with Dany's goals kind of being set, and they'll become more clear and emerge for her. And then I really like where we're at with Jon. Jon's learned a lot. He's painful lessons, heartbreaking lessons. He still believes in his home and his heart that his home is where the Night's Watch is, and the home is the Seven Kingdoms. But his experiences north of the Wall have changed him forever. But he knows there's a bigger threat. He knows there's this looming threat of both the White Walkers, which he has seen up front in person, but also Mance Rayder. And it's interesting that he gets back home. He's home, and they kind of, the powers that be, we got a lot of these characters returning. They don't necessarily consider this Jon's home. And Jon has this new goal to look outside. His vows are broken, and he's going to look outside his own walls and really not get caught up in the trivial nature of what vows he broke, but the overall vow he keeps. I am a protector of the realm. And Mance at this point is a threat to the realm. I think this will start to change. It's already in Jon's heart. He says it here, free folk, not wilding. That part has changed. He's been with them. He's broke bread with him. He lay a wildling woman, free folk woman. He has changed, and I think his new goal is starting to take him. This goal of defending the realm, capital R almost, is going to take him outside this thing he feels home, which is up to now was the Night's Watch and the Seven Kingdoms of which he was a part of. It is a part of. Wants to include everyone in this. But Jon and Dany are just starting out their journeys. Another impact on the story, and this is fun to really to go back to 2014 when you kind of really first heard this. And again, we always, I know it's probably annoying for people who listen regularly, but I concentrate on the show first and not necessarily Song of Ice and Fire and the books and everything. So you may have known and been, a little more clued into this. But if you're a not even a casual viewer, but if you're a dedicated viewer of Game of Thrones in 2014, this season opens up, and you have probably a certain view of Robert's rebellion and Robert Baratheon and the story that you have been told. It's the story that a lot of the Stark children have been repeating, and a lot of people in the land talk about. Now, you may be like me and be walking around with your R plus L equals J shirt, kind of a wink and a smug wink and a nod at times to those who know these theories and know maybe more of the truth. But I got to tell you, as someone who does own an R plus L equals J shirt and wore it almost weekly, I did wash it, but wore it almost weekly back during this era, I can tell you a lot of people, a lot of Game of Thrones fans weren't clued into it because they're show only. And they don't do what I do. They don't do what you do and go pick up a map or go pick up a book or just go read Wiki of Ice and Fire or check out a George R. R. Martin interview or listen to Alt Shift X or listen to History of Westeros. They're just watching the show. And they know the show and they love the show. They might even be able to compete in a trivia question contest about the show. But this episode is the first time someone stands up in front of all of us. It's Oberyn to Tyrion, and he is, to me, the first to solidly state what is essentially, as we learn, and not even essentially, it's the truth, that Rhaegar left his sister, Elia, for another woman, that being Lyanna Stark. Until now, we know the story. Rhaegar kidnapped, raped, and then probably left Lyanna Stark for dead. We know none of this truth. And it's brutal, and it's disgusting, and it's designed to make you hate Rhaegar Targaryen and be happy for Robert and his rebellion. The turning at Harrenhal, the great history there. And on the off chance that you're watching this this show or listening to this podcast and you haven't taken a deep dive in the turning at Harrenhal through a wiki or something like that, do it, because it's great stuff. I know we're not going to get a Robert's Rebellion spin-off show, but I've always thought, hey, could you just give me a tourney of Harrenhal movie, like a 2-hour just retelling of that story? I put it on HBO Max. I'd be happy. Know all the results, doesn't matter. I want to see it. I just want to see it. It's great stuff. And Rhaegar and the Winter Rose, it's the rose that launched a war, quite frankly. And we've heard Robert's version, even Ned's version of it, though Ned is obviously keeping a lot of it back. We heard, more importantly, I think, what his kids believe all through this, and what the legends being treated as fact. Even in season 6, the stuff with Sir Arthur Dayne and Howland Reed and Bran seeing the truth about that. It's interesting to dig into that kind of stuff. But this, again, Oberyn is the first just to be like, nope, Rhaegar was married to my sister. That was what the arrangement was. That was what the marriage was. She had these 2 kids, and Rhaegar left her. Oh, wonderful Rhaegar Targaryen left Ellaria. Excuse me, Elia. Don't confuse those. A lot of E's and L's. He left her. Hey, he cheated on her. And went to Lyanna Stark, and a whole war started. And the result of that is my sister Elia Martell and her 2 children brutally murdered at the hands of the Mountain on orders from Tywin Lannister. Oberyn is saying this, and until then, we've got some wink and nods from maybe Varys or Baelish or other people, and it's easy to say, well, that's just their view. Truth is what you make of it. Obi-Wan Kenobi tells us, a certain point of view. Everything, the very truths you cling to, you depend greatly on a certain point of view. Our certain point of view, yeah. Obi-Wan's knowledge, his advice, his belief to perspectives applies to this too, right? That's been the first 3 seasons. But here's Oberyn, and immediately we like something about him. Immediately we kind of feel there's something about this character. Again, if you're not super familiar with the books, go to that position, and here he is, just directly saying everything that you've been told on this show about your good buddy Robert and his good pal Ned. We like those characters. There's a big lie attached to it, and I'm here for that. And I think that more than anything is this episode's impact on the story and us. That's the big one for me. Talked about the new Dario, which is impacts us as an audience in a way. We also returned in full to Castle Black. I always have my Night's Watch cap on. And I like it. I felt, John feels he's going home. I understand it because I felt like I was going home. I love the Castle Black stuff in season 1, and I love Owen Teal as Sir Alistair Thorne. I just, I think he's good, and it's a crusty character. I don't root for him, but he's got some hard truths, he says, and Game of Thrones has a lot of characters that deliver those hard truths that maybe you don't want to hear, but you need to. And I think he's got some for John. But, he's a flawed character indeed. Dominic Carter returns as Janos Slint. Definitely not rooting for Janos Slint, but it's just good to go back to those characters, these kind of like season 1, season 2 characters, and go back to the Wall and spend time at Castle Black. It just kind of, as the show, and maybe it's because the show does kind of change, not dramatically, but it goes through a lot of changes, and we got new characters and we got new storylines. Jaime Lannister's got a new haircut. It just kind of felt good, felt comforting to go back to Castle Black. So I understand with that. We love tracking things with foreshadowing and more meaning. So let's look at that right now here on Casterly Talk. All right, big sip of water. Don't have a Chipotle burrito full with extra salt before you do a podcast. You'll find yourself real thirsty. And when you're talking by yourself, not a lot of break points for water. A little lesson from your old friend Kenny. Foreshadowing things with more meaning. Love going back and looking at these little points in these episodes that just might just mean a little more to us, might tug on your heartstrings a little bit more, or are hints of things to come both in the season and in the show. These are just kind of fun, also important. Season 4, if my memory serves, season 4 seemed to have a lot of in-season foreshadowing, right? There's the one point later on where Baelish just basically lists 3 deaths that are going to happen, if I recall. We'll get to it when we get to it. I know he definitely predicts again, not directly predicting Tywin's death, but basically says, hey, here's ways people can die, and it's all the ways in the show. And it's this season that stands out more than any other season. I actually enjoy that stuff, which is why I love doing this. Why Game of Thrones is one of those shows throughout its history just rewards you for the rewatch. And I'm still shocked. I still find people going, oh, yeah, I love Game of Thrones. I'm thinking of rewatching it. I'm like, oh, cool. When was the last rewatch you did? And they're like, no, I've never really rewatched it. Go back. And if you're watching, if you're listening, I'm sure you've rewatched it several times. But I'm having so much fun this time around for Casterly Talk, going back and really digging into some of these little things that just mean more. And season 4's got a ton, but more importantly, episode 1's got Tywin once again losing the support of his children, slowly, surely. We've got these big moments with Tyrion and Cersei, particularly in season 3, where we talked about a lot at the end of season 3. Tywin's goals to protect the family name. It's the dynasty. We've got to protect. It's really the last name, right? And he's not keeping Tyrion and Cersei in the fold. They're slowly starting to grow, just absolutely tired of it. And we know that what's going to happen. Well, now Jaime's back. Fresh haircut, as I said. And he's kind of ready to pick up the pieces and keep going. And Tywin has different plans. Tywin wants to send him back to Casterly Rock. And Jaime says no. And Tywin is it's a good strategy. It's what I would do if I was Tywin in this position. But now it's Jaime. It's the one who's probably maybe been the most loyal. I know Cersei would say I've been the most loyal and I've paid attention the most. But I think it's hard to not acknowledge that Jaime might have been the one that Tywin had the most affinity for. I fall short of saying love because I don't know what Tywin loves other than his own last name and winning brutally at war. But he loses Jaime here, starts to lose him here, and that has a lot more meaning, especially as the show goes on. Yes, Tyrion, we know, is going to take him out, but how does Tyrion take him out? How does he even get that chance? It's Jaime siding with his brother over his father. And it's conversations like this that I think start to make that possible. Sansa, of course, gets the necklace, which has been really fun throughout the show's run to go back and rediscover. As someone who was watching The Purple Wedding and did not know the ins and outs, this was a great detective mystery for me. And I love that it's out in the open, not in the sense of, I don't think you watch just this scene with Ser Dantos and Sansa and the Godswood. I don't think you immediately pick up on it if you're not aware of what's going to happen. But looking back, there it is all along the way. Shae and Tyrion continue their fallout. That's going to have some ramifications. And Shae saying, my lion to Tyrion, that's her first A real big line of the scene. She's got some stuff, of course, before Sansa, but that's her first real big, bold line. My lion. Boom. We know later on that is the words she'll say when she thinks Tywin has returned to his chambers and Tyrion is there. That has a lot more meaning now. And then Bernadette, she's there spying. She gets the scoop. That means everything. That's a lot of just things with more meaning. That just means a ton to what season 4 is going to be. It's not subtle. I think we get it, but it's there. I love the Brienne and Marjorie Tyrell have a brief moment together. I do love Brienne after all these years, all these years. We're now in season 4 and season 2 is where Marjorie and Brienne is where we meet them and where the death of Renly. And here's Brienne like, no. I've had quite a couple years. Anyways, it was the demon ghost child of Stannis with his face. He did it. I swear it. And one day I will avenge our king. That's her line to Marjorie. One day I will avenge our king. And sadly, but justly for me being a Stannis fan, she does fulfill that promise. So this moment has a lot more meaning. We're going to talk a little bit more about Jaime's empty pages. But that is a direct correlation to the very, very end of the show, which was a moment that made me cry. And this one kind of sets that up. So there you go. There's a lot of scenes I want to talk about here. I don't want to get held up, but there's a lot of fun. By the way, this episode's also really funny. Even Joffrey's got a great line when they're in that with Maren Trant and Jaime are going over plans for the wedding, and Joffrey has a line, yeah, he'll guard the thing or whatever. I just love that line. A lot of comedy. Bronn is very funny and quite quippy through all of this. And Bronn, and talking about show Bronn is truly a character with no plot home, right? After season 1 or 2, and really in truth, after season 1, he you have to weave him in because Jerome Flynn is so good. And I think sometimes they don't know what to do with him. I particularly think season 8, unfortunately, Bronn doesn't work as much for me in terms of just where he fits in the story. But that's also because he's definitely after book 1, he's just kind of this, he's there. He's not as involved as much, and Stokesworth and all that kind of the subplot going on there. But he's so good. And he is, to me, another character that's better on the show than he is in the books because Jerome Flynn just absolutely brings him up. So I don't disagree with anyone who would criticize, hey, they don't know what to do with Bronn, and after this, Bronn just really has nowhere to go. I don't think that's a bad way to look at it. I just won't bemoan that. I just won't bemoan the show keeping him around. He's too good. And I'll keep him around for even moments where they meet Oberyn Martell and Oberyn's like, let's get some girls. And Bronn's nodding yes, and Tyrion's shaking his head no. Little moments like that with Bronn, I'll keep him around to the end of time for me. And I love it. He has that line, I'd probably go to sleep, but I'm getting old. I love the way he plays all that there. Tyrion's got some funny line. Prayer can be helpful, I hear, when talking with Sansa. And then Qyburn, who I love Qyburn, as we know, Anton Lesser. Qyburn, Jaime, and Cersei in the hand. Now, Jaime's getting his hand. It's an important scene, right? It's a big moment. He gets the hand. Cersei's clearly not happy. You feel you get to a little bit know more of the connection with Qyburn, but it's a funny scene. Her talking about, they worked for hours, days and days on it, and Jaime questions that. She says, the better part of the afternoon. The whole conversation about Pycelle. I won't let Pycelle near me. He smells like a dead cat. Jaime says, I don't know what a dead cat smells like. She says, they smell like Pycelle. Really funny stuff. And then Jaime's hand wave when Qyburn says goodbye. Love everything about the scene. It's a little comedy sketch with some serious stuff going on. There's that as well. But let's get into some of these big scenes, what they mean, and how they start tying into the themes and lessons, if you will. I'll jump a little bit ahead to the themes and lessons, and we'll come back for this particular episode. Sometimes I mess around with the format here. Hope y'all don't mind. It's just one man in his home Star Wars studio. And trying to find the themes and lessons that emerge from this episode, this is where I was pulled to. And sometimes, it's kind of where the mood strikes in terms of themes. I mentioned a little bit at the top what you were, who you were versus kind of where you are going and who you will be now. Because there's also the introduction of Ilaria Sand is you have the great stuff with what's his name, Oliver there, saying, calling her lady. Oh, I'm not a lady, says Laura Sand. Goes into, hey, this is who I am. I'm a bastard. She's a whore. You're a procurer. Like, this is who we are. And it's really echoed. It's an echo of season 1, episode 1 with Tyrion, Jon. Wear what you are on your chest, and it can't hurt you. And Game of Thrones brings it up a lot. It's kind of that category of hard truths. So there's a lot about this episode of, hey, know who you are. There's even the Oberyn Martell has the line to the Lannister soldiers in Littlefinger's brothel. Can I tell you a secret? You're not a lion. You're just a pink little man who's too slow in the draw. There's a lot of, hey, here's who you actually are versus maybe what you think you are, and let's play the right roles here. But that folds nicely, or at least tries to fold nicely into what I think is this idea of, again, what or who you were versus where you are going, and that starts to emerge. Again, this is the show to me itself going. You've known what we are for 3 seasons. But a lot of that is starting to change as we go forward. We've got to go forward with our story. We've got to take it to where we need it to go because of the story we feel we're telling on the show. And a lot of the characters you were rooting for, a lot of the characters you thought were going to win are gone. We know what we are, what we were, and we know where we're going. That's at play a lot for me in this episode here. And you go into Jaime's identity. He talks about it in this great scene with his father. Kingslayer, Oathbreaker, all these things, hear what they say. And he doesn't want to go back to Casterly Rock because he's a man who loves his sister. He's really only confirmed that and confessed that to Brienne. So he defies his father because of that. He is and was in many ways a Lannister, but he's all these other things, and people have all these other thoughts, but he knows who he is. So because of that, he's going to try to have that take him forward. And the future is wide open as those pages that Joffrey points out are pretty empty in the big old book of the Kingsguard there. Jaime's life and future and how he goes forward and who he is going forward is wide open, even though he feels it's a certain path. That's there. Daenerys Targaryen is a ruler. She's a conqueror. Daria is going to say that a little bit later to her in the show. But she's a ruler that needs to learn to rule. She hasn't had the chance to actually really do that. What were you and what are you going to be? She's going through that transition. Jon, the Night's Watchman, who is no longer really accepted or believed by these men he's made these vows with. And like I said up top, his vows now extend outside these walls. This season, there's a lot of him we've got to defend this wall's going to come down. The free folk are going to come here 100,000 strong. So it still kind of maybe comes across as us versus them. But for Jon, it's this, to me, the switch into, again, for the realm, the whole realm, and where he ends up going, where we need to get, the free folk need to be behind the wall just as much as us. They have just as much as the right to that kind of safety. Jon's not quite there yet, but this view of Jon as a just pure of heart Night's Watchman, these vows he took, that's who he was. It's not necessarily where he is going. He's in a point of transition. I think that kind of stuff is present all the way through it. Little things as well at play in these episodes, tying into who you are and trying to own who you are. And that might guide you going forward. There's that little moment. The introduction of Dany in this episode is the dragon's now bigger. Drogon sitting on mom's lap and the dragons fight over the chewed up charred goat, and Drogon, of course, is very angry, nearly attacks his mom. As an owner of Chihuahuas, I've seen this happen. And Jorah's got the great line here: "They're dragons, Khaleesi. They can never be tamed, even by their mother." That's what they are. You have to own what they are, and maybe you can go forward in a better way. And this, where we're going to hear this, we're going to hear this in season 7. Olenna Tyrell is going to stare at Dany and say, "You're a dragon, be a dragon." So I think that's a lot of what Dany and again the show, but what Dany's going on in this season. Who are you? I'm a dragon. And how do you go forward with that? Can a dragon be a ruler? Can a dragon be tamed? Can a dragon do the taming? All these questions are at play. And I love that. Brienne has that moment too. When she meets Olenna Tyrell. The Queen of Thorns is so great with you. Oh my God, aren't you marvelous? Absolutely singular. We have spent 2 full seasons listening to Brienne be mocked, taunted, dismissed, disparaged, called all the names in the book, called an ugly woman, all these horrible, all the way through. And here she sees Olenna Tyrell, and Olenna Tyrell tells her, "This is who you are. You're absolutely marvelous, absolutely singular. How are you going to go forward with that?" I love that even for Brienne. All right, individual scenes there. There's some just amazing stuff at play in these episodes. And I want to go into our question and tweet section. Eric Monroe chiming back in. Again, you want to get a question into the show. All you need to do is go to Twitter and follow me at Ken Knapsack and use the hashtag CasterlyTalk there on the bottom of the screen if you're watching here along on YouTube. Eric says this, foreshadowing this episode with Joffrey mocking Jaime's page being so empty. As we now know, Brienne changes that in the series finale. I actually like to read that book. I would too. Joffrey also brings up the Sword of the Morning, who will go get to see in season 6. That's correct. Mentions Sir Duncan the Tall. I love when the show acknowledges that lore. That lore is present in the show, right? Every sigil, every bit of armor, the show is dealing and playing around with this lore, but it is fun when you get those kind of things. And then you can be, if you've read the Dunk and Egg series, you can be the know-it-all in the room at the Game of Thrones party with people who, you don't know Sir Duncan the Tall? Oh, let me try to tell you, but not tell you. I love that stuff there. So Eric, great stuff there. Yeah, let's concentrate on some of that stuff there. Particularly with Jaime, again, I talk about there's this theme, this theme of who you are and who you're going to be and how you're going to make it move all forward there. I absolutely enjoy Jaime being confronted with this open path that is there for him. And I love the little scene. There's the follow-up scene, Sansa, right before she interacts with Ser Dantos. She's out there, and Jaime and Bran are watching her. And I really love that in that particular scene, Brienne, that absolutely singular Bran, who has these oaths, and oaths are very valuable to her. And we know she's going to keep her oaths as best she can to the end of all things. I love that Brienne is challenging Jaime, who's like, yep, there she is, Sansa. I know I made that oath to Catelyn. I know that I kind of made that oath to you. Bring her to safety. Well, Arya's probably dead. And there's Jaime, there's Sansa. And you know what? She's Sansa Lannister, and she seems pretty safe. So there you go. I love that Bran pushes back on him. I love that Brienne is in keeping with this, what this episode's communicating, is saying, you made an oath. And to me, this is related to those blank pages. She is not at this time, she's not aware and of the blank pages in the book, but is aware of him, knows who he is deep down, a man who loves his sister, a man who felt he did his best to save the kingdom and was marked a Kingslayer for it and an oath breaker. And she's saying, no, you've made this oath. Keep it. Go forward. That's the story to tell. It's a key point for Jaime. And, the tragedy of Jaime is some of the stuff doesn't stick. But I think the bittersweet nature of it all, the bittersweet underlying factor to the story of Jaime and Brienne is she is, as Eric points out, she is the one that fills out those pages for Jaime. And she knows what all the things he did. And there's some things along the way he's already done for her. And that's what she's saying. I know who you are. You're trying to break this oath now. I get it. But I don't think that's who you really are. And once you know who you really are and know who you were, you can move forward with it. Both in maybe getting a confidence, being called absolutely singular is probably some confidence for Brienne, but also going, hey, this is things you've done and own that so you can go forward in a better way. And I think that's part of Jaime's story. The blank pages start to get filled. Already, again, stuff has been there, and that's what she's saying here. There's Sansa. You made a vow. Keep that vow. Keep that oath. It's what you need to do going forward. And don't let fear drive you. Cersei's being driven by fear. Some of it justified over time, but in this episode, she's so upset at Jaime, and it's not fair. It's not fair to Jaime. You didn't come back. You left me. She's so afraid of being alone, and that's going to drive her. And she can only fill that void through violence and vengeance. And I think Cersei, in the end, with everyone leaving her, her children dead and gone, her brother no longer at her side. Again, they'll go through as he goes to Dorne and all the stuff, and Jaime ends up, and Jaime eventually, of course, leaves her, as we know. Season 7 stuff. Tywin's gone. Everyone's gone. And that was Cersei's fear. That drives her. So she tries to stuff that void, fill that void with the kingdom. And that's the one thing she felt would make all that pain go away, keep her protected, keep her safe. And it's literally the thing that comes crumbling down on her. But Jaime's there, the only one she really wanted around. Not counting her children, of course. I love that's kind of some of the stuff at play here in this episode. Other great scene. I actually do love the Thens and Styr showing up. Good Russian performer playing Styr. I being of Russian nature. Yuri Kolnikov. Excuse me. Kolnikov. Yuri is Styr. I think he is spectacular. I love the Thens. No, Tormund's got the great line, Thens. I fucking hate Thens. It's I just it's almost as if the show is saying, look, we know by this point you definitely are like Ygritte, and you're rooting for her and Jon to get together, and you probably like Tormund. Don't worry, they're all still a threat. This horrible monster, Styr of the Thens, the Magnar of the Thens, has shown up, and they're not nice. They're eating crows, and it's disgusting. So I actually love that scene. The music in it is really good. The tension, like I said, this is a season 4, episode 1 episode. And episode 1 has to do all these just kind of almost boring functions. And this is a functional scene to catch up with these characters. But this new threat adds a lot of tension to it. And now also the tension within the ranks. And I just love it. I love a little spice there. And that. All right. So in closing here, I want to get to 2 big scenes that I absolutely do love. And we start, of course, with the Tywin burning the 2 swords, but we're immediately kind of go to Tyrion and Bronn and Podrick waiting for what they feel will be Prince Doran. He, of course, doesn't show up. Instead, Prince Oberyn is already here, and he's a wild card. This is a spectacular intro to a character. Again, a lot of great scenes introducing new characters to us. I don't think any of those scenes have the impact like this scene. It is unhinged, slightly. There's an edge and a danger to Oberyn. There's a sexuality to Oberyn in a show that freely throws nudity and sex around like it's going out of style, and already at this point has a reputation for sex position and all. I think there's something really effective, not just titillating about this open relationship they enjoy and what's going on here. You can stop there on that scene and just think it's some titillation. I think it's so much more. It is just introducing everything you thought you knew about the show before is different now with Oberyn Martell around. He is, in a way, my view of him is he's the world of Game of Thrones. Essos, Westeros, all Summer Isles. Name them. He represents all of it because he's so traveled, right? He's been around the world. He is the world of GOT. Come to the doorstep of those in power. There's a lot of power all over the world, this we know, but I think a lot of it still is centered at King's Landing. And if those in King's Landing got upset at Slaver's Bay, they would do something about it. If they got upset at Bravos, they would do something about it. Would they always be successful? I don't know. I'm not saying that, but I think there's King's Landing is in a lot of ways the power of this world. And here he is, the world of GOT, come to challenge those in power. And he has this great purpose. We learned so much about him, from the hand over the flame and the cool, sexy confidence of Pedro Pascal. Him speaking his truths and just saying, here's what actually is. And he has great purpose. And I think in contrast to what we open up this episode with Tywin and the two swords. Tywin is the bad guy. I think we see immediately Oberyn as a good guy. You know, we like Tyrion. We're not rooting against Tyrion, but we are kind of still rooting against Lannisters. And here he is, just going after Lannisters. And here he is stating this. And we like him just as much as Tyrion knows he can't be trusted. Tyrion is trying to connect with him, trying to calm him down. We're second sons. We see things the same way. I wasn't there, as he gives him the story. It's, by the way, exposition, of course, some of the hardest thing to deliver in any kind of book, movie, television show. It's the boring stuff. You hear Dune. I haven't had a chance to see Dune yet, but hey, it's got to get it does a lot of world building, which means exposition that can be boring. It's tough to do, or it becomes, I love the Phantom Menace, but one of my favorite Star Wars jokes is the Naboo pilot Rick Ollier. Literally every line he says is exposition, and it's funny, but I think it works to a degree. But here's Oberyn Martell just dumping this bunch of exposition on us here, and it's just delivered in the best way possible. It's such a great scene. But what is it telling us? Even go to the stuff in the brothel. Again, it's Game of Thrones titillation. Here's 3 women. We're going to choose one for my paramour here. She's got the lady, and you know what, Oliver, you stick around. I'm going to take you. Here it is. And it does such a good job of saying that conversation with Oliver, of him just like, well, I'm not on the market here. I'm not for sale. The hell you aren't. I'm a prince. You ever been with a prince? And when Oliver kind of consents to this action that's going to happen, and has that line of like, which way do you like it? Oberyn says quite directly, my way. Now, it's a great little moment, right? Again, it's Game of Thrones playing around with some brothel fun. It means everything to what Oberyn is. He wants it my way. He's here for this great purpose. He's given us this information as an audience. You thought Robert and even Ned were the good guys, but what happened out of that rebellion was disgusting and hurt my family directly. So who are the good guys? Because I'll tell you, I think I am. And I'm here to prove that. Tyrion, tell your father that I'm here. And the Lannisters aren't the only ones to pay their debts, right? Now I'm jumping ahead to the scene, but let's go back a little bit too, as he tells Oliver, my way. And hey, it's going to be a big old sex party happening here. Arya and Oberyn are in town. Ring the bells. It's going to be wild, crazy, sexy fun. But before that happens, because that's what Oberyn wants right then and there, wants some entertainment, he hears the Lannister soldiers singing Reigns of Castamere. And he is distracted. He's distracted by his blind passion. You see Arya Sand react to that, trying to pull Oberyn. No, Oberyn. And this is a guy who gets what he wants. So what he wants is to kill Lannisters. He wants dead Lannisters. And that's going to cost him. And that's part of the lesson of Oberyn Martell. I love looking at what these characters represent and what they're telling us. That's why I keep going on and on about why do I love Stannis? It's telling you about a blind pursuit of something that costs you everything that who you are, costs you yourself, costs you your soul. That's a lot of Stannis stuff. And we're tracking this stuff with Dany. We're tracking this stuff with Jon. But here comes Oberyn for this it's the greatest like one season of a character ever. And we're rooting for him, and we want him. But built in the story right from the start is him going, I'm here for a purpose. I'm here for a reason. I get what I want, and what I want is my way. Boom. But I'm immediately distracted by my blind passion of vengeance. It works out here. Boom. Great stabbing of the dagger in the wrist. It's a great scene. But then he has that conversation with Tyrion. That's where we get a lot of the information about Rhaegar. That's where we get his purpose, and that's where he is like, hey, I'm in town to do this. In this, but he can lose himself if he's not focused, if he doesn't give up a little bit more of himself for the bigger picture here. His passion could, as we know, will cost him. And what does it say to you? What's the lesson there for us? That's the stuff I love digging into with these properties. Star Wars, Game of Thrones, whatever. I love finding the things in these stories that are questions for us. But we'll get to that a little bit later on. Oberyn's journey has officially begun Final thing I want to talk about here is this episode is, of course, called Two Swords. It's not very subtle what that means. Yes, we got two swords being made from one in the beginning. Tywin is here to complete the destruction of House Stark, but that's not the two swords. I mean, there's two swords, but the second sword in this episode, I think you got ice being destroyed, and then of course we are going to Arya and Needle. It's a tiny little needle of a sword, but the flame of the Starks is alive, and like I said, it's not subtle. DB Weiss talks about it. He says this, and Benioff gave it, hey, we wanted to start the season this way. We wanted to be no dialogue, just everything on screen for you to take in. The pictures and the music tell the story here. And it's a great cold open. And this is, DB Weiss describes this as, it's a show of power from Tywin, not just in this timeline, in the world that he lives in, but it's a show of power for the history books for Tywin. I defeated House Stark. I wiped it clean, and then I took their ancestral sword, this giant, oversized, needlessly large sword, ice, and I melted it down into two swords for my family. The history books will remember that. Weiss calls it a rational decision for Tywin and the correct move in a way. And the way it plays is the bad guy won. The bad guy won here. The Lannister music is playing. The flames are going. And it's all reflected on Tywin's smug face. He thinks he's won. This season begins with Tywin thinking, I have won. And this season's going to end with Tywin literally losing everything. And one of the reasons why, well, there's two reasons, a lot of reasons, but we've seen immediately the scene with Jaime. He's starting to lose the support of those around him. He's starting to, the act of defending the last name and not connecting with the first names is going to cost him. But he thinks he has destroyed House Stark. He thinks he has won. But at the end of this episode, Arya reconnects with Needle. Whereas Tywin feels his legacy is being secured. His end is near, and here is Arya reuniting with a sword that Tywin can't even fathom existing. He's so up literally in his tower. He's so up just stuck on his own legacy and what he has done. He just doesn't even have time to worry that maybe that girl out there who we don't know if she's alive or dead, the girl that was his cupbearer in season 2, some of the best episodes or best moments of the show, of course. She's out there. She's got the sword. And even though she isn't the one that takes out Tywin, and her journey takes her a lot of different places, and there's a lot of things that will factor into the final season of Game of Thrones. It is this thematic reminder, just big and bold. I said, not subtle. The Starks live on. The story lives on. And Arya is this avatar for Stark vengeance, but she's not the only one around. Sansa's still alive. Her flames will still burn. She'll get there eventually. Jon Snow's still alive. He will get there eventually. Bran Stark, still alive. He'll get there eventually. Tywin has not won. Tywin has not won. The bad guys think they've won, but there's still some good in Game of Thrones. And that is, I think, what this episode is also trying to communicate, tell us, and maybe, hopefully, as we go into a new chapter, a new era of the show, season 4, 5, and 6, maybe give us a little bit of comfort. But I don't know. What do you think? That is my look at season 4, episode 1. Yes. From there, we are going to be looking at The Lion and the Rose. Oh boy, this is a big one. We're not waiting. Season 4 doesn't waste any time. Does not waste any time. We're going to go to Joffrey's wedding, and we're going to see a little bit more of what that means. All right. That is it for now. Thanks for listening and watching Casterly Talk. If you're listening on the podcast, please continue to do that. Please subscribe on Apple, wherever you listen. Leave a comment, star us, whatever you got to do. We are continuing to move this show forward and get ready for House of the Dragon, but also have fun right now going back. But also don't forget to get over to YouTube, subscribe to Casterly Talk on YouTube. Subscribe, ring the bell, leave a nice comment, do all those things that help YouTube channels grow and get bigger. We are going to keep taking this channel forward as we look again towards Casterly Talk. Excuse me, House of the Dragon. This is Casterly Talk. Sometimes I just say too many words. Thank you all for listening. We'll see you next time here on Casterly Talk.